Well, it's great to be here with Peter Fowler. Peter, welcome. It's you're a golfer that's had a long and wonderful career dating right back to 1977. It's a career where you've amassed 20 professional victories, including, of course, the one here at Paraparaumu Beach, which we're incredibly proud of, back in 1993. And it's obviously a course that you've enjoyed over your years. You've visited us many times, and so we're looking forward to, I guess, hearing those stories, and as a golf club, reconnecting with someone that's had their history etched in our history, which is a fantastic thing. You're affectionately known by the nickname of Chook for obvious reasons, I guess. But Peter, it's wonderful to have you with us on Legends of the Links. And how does it find you tonight?
No, it's good. I'm just coming out of that lockdown, so looking forward to tomorrow and having my first game of golf. But no, I've been pretty good, and it's a good chance the last couple of months just to catch up with all my jobs at home.
So, Peter, you play under the Australian flag, but I understand you lived in New Zealand and you've been living here for a number of years. How did that come about?
I married a Kiwi, so I've been living here for 22 years now, and since I stopped living in London, and but it's been a great country to live in. It's I find it quite an easy, relaxed country to be in. People are great, we're all Kiwis and Aussies are essentially the same, I think, as you would know living in Melbourne some years ago. And but yeah, I'm a Kiwi. I've got my national. I've got my citizenship now in New Zealand, so, which I'm proud of, and so I've really enjoyed it here.
So you live in New Zealand now, but let's go back to where it all began. I understand you were born in New South Wales, Australia. What was early life like for a young Peter Fowler?
Yeah, I was born in Sydney and lived at Beecroft, which is where Pennant Hills Golf Club was. So before I started playing golf at 12, I played soccer and cricket. My father played sort of country cricket in New South Wales against the English test team. So that was a couple of times. So that was pretty good. So I've got a great love of cricket. But just before I started high school, I had a first game of golf with my older brother and his friends, and then my father got me, a dozen lessons with the local pro Ian Alexander at Pennant Hills Golf Club, and I started my love affair with golf then.
Fantastic. And how quickly did you progress in the game? At what stage did you realise that you were getting reasonably good at it?
I don't think I started at 12 years old. I don't think it was a slow progress. I caddied at the golf club, and I caddied for the pro and some of the members and the assistant pros and all that sort of thing. But it probably wasn't until I was 14 that I went from shooting 95 to 75, and that was sort of happened just at Bondi Golf Club in Sydney at a schoolboy tournament. I shot 5 over par, and it's got 1 par 4 and 8 par 3s, and then from then on I was able to shoot in the 70s. So that was a quick improvement. My older brother, we used to have a good tussle, and all of a sudden I was beating him by 20 shots, and he couldn't work out how that happened. But the only club I've ever been a member really was Coffs Harbour Golf Club, where my parents were from northern New South Wales at Coffs Harbour originally, and then so for holidays we went there, and I got a membership there for $5 a year for a sub-junior. And I got my first handicap was 14, and then the following week I was on 9. And so that was about 14 years old. And then when I started as assistant pro, I think I was about 4 handicap. But I was a hard worker, and sort of slowly progressed from there.
Did you make any representative teams, back in those early amateur days?
No, I didn't. I didn't really play any amateur club golf. With my handicap from Coffs Harbour, I I played stroke events in the schoolboy tournaments in Sydney, and I used to, on the weekends, I would go to, say, Campbelltown or some of the clubs around Sydney and play the Varden events or the junior Varden events, just stroke play. So I only ever played stroke play golf, no club golf at all. My friends did, but so I was really, I was really just putting scores on the board. I didn't have sort of a handicap in Sydney. So, but I think that helped me playing all over Sydney on the weekends and different clubs. It helped me. I could easily go from one course to another. So I think that probably I had an eye for course management and how to work my way around a golf course. Where a lot of my mates, we'd all play the same at Pennant Earls, and then they couldn't play. They played terrible when we played other golf courses, and I guess so. It was a good upbringing for my golf, anyway.
So you went the apprenticeship route. So obviously you were interested in going the club professional kind of career path and teaching the game. Was that where you were heading?
I think really for golf really evolved for me. I didn't. Okay, we didn't have a lot of golf on TV back those days, but I remember I was on the weekends for a couple of years before I finished school at 15. I was working in the club in the pro shop on the weekends, one day a week. And the pro during that time, he said, "Well, what are you going to do when you finish? When are you going to finish school?" And I said, "Oh, well, as soon as I can," because I didn't enjoy that. Right. And he said, "Well, you can be the assistant pro if you want." And I said, "Oh, that'd be great." So, so that's really it. Just sort of fell in my lap, and I think I was very lucky. Ian was a hard worker. He's a non-drinker. And I think that really helped me. It was a good grounding for me, and I love working in the pro shop for $48 a week for 55 hours. So when I think back, it's not very much money, but I loved every minute of it.
So you completed your apprenticeship?
I did the 3 years apprenticeship, and during the apprenticeship, we used to play trainee tournaments every Monday, 36 holes. I think nowadays they only play about 18 holes and not so many. But we played a lot of golf on the Mondays, and my day off was a Friday, and I used to go to the course we were going to play trainee tournaments at, and I would play 36 holes on the Friday, and then on the Monday we'd play the trainee tournament. And I think because of my course management skills and refresh, good memory of the golf course, I played quite well in the trainee tournaments. So
how do you graduate from that and playing trainee events and possibly the odd pro-am, I assume, to starting to play, and forgive me what the circuit looked like back then, but I mean, there would have been an Australasian circuit, of course it was. What was the progression? Like, how did that come about?
Well, I was ranked pretty high as assistant pro, and I really only ever thought about playing. I never thought about being a club professional. But a lot of us, that's what we did back then. Wayne Grady was one. Greg Norman, he was a assistant pro at Beverley Park in Sydney for Bill and McWilliam. Couple of years before me, but each year you have to play you pass your playing sort of test. Yep. And I was doing that quite comfortably. That was no problem. And you did your exams, your bookworking, and your club repairs and all that sort of thing. But my main focus was really just playing. And I think my second year, I started to play. I got a national invite and played a few tournaments. Yeah, I still had to pre-qualify, but I was allowed to pre-qualify, and I played 3 tournaments in 1977, and another 3 or 4 in 1978, and then I finished my traineeship at the end of 78, and 79 was my first full year on the tour. And back then Australia has always had a lot of pro-ams, so when I turned pro, I played a lot of pro-ams, I played the tour. And on the tour, they had about 17 events.
Yeah, right.
Okay, some of them were only worth $10,000 total prize money, or $15,000. But I just travelled and played, and
Did,
I
did,
know
you tra- did your travels bring you across to New Zealand during that time?
My first trip to New Zealand was 1980, and I played the New Zealand Open at Naumutu Golf Club in New Plymouth. That was a good when Buddy Allen won. I think Simon Arn, who I'm good friends with now, I think he finished second that year. I don't think I came back in 81 or 82, but I was back in 84, and I think I played most of them after that.
So move forward a couple of years there, just in between the years that you mentioned there. It's 1983, and you teed it up in your National Open, the Australian Open. Not only teeing it up, I mean, talk us through that week and talk us through that event.
Okay, well, 1983. I just finished my first full year in Europe, played 14 events when we had Monday qualifying. And I think that after being a pro for 6 years and having a year in Europe, I was quite tough by then. And when I think back, I counted up all the competitive weeks I played leading up to that 83 Australian Open in November. I'd played at 43 weeks a year for about 6 straight years. Yep. So, I'd amassed 250 weeks of competitive golf, grinding, travelling. So I think the mental toughness was crucial in that situation. And, although it was my first 4-round tournament victory, I think the 250 competitive weeks really set me up, and you need that sort of just all the skills and the mental toughness to be able to pull an event off like that. But I missed the cut the week before the Open in Warrnambool, and but anyway, I got to Kingston Heath, which I loved, and it was rock hard that year. It was really, really difficult. Right. And a couple of things I remember about the course is how firm and fast the greens were, and in the tournament there was no rounds in the 60s the first 2 rounds out of all the field, and there was only 4 rounds. One in the 60s on Saturday, which I had a 68, and there was 3 rounds on the 60s on Sunday, which was myself, David Graham, and Ian Bakerfinch. So it was a tough old week.
Yeah. So you're heading into the last round. Where were you positioned?
I was tied for the lead with Paul Foley from Queensland, and the usual nerves. But I think when I think back, part of my focus that week was just staying calm. Yep. And I was staying with friends, and they were following me around, and I was just trying to stay calm. But I found myself. I birdied 4 of the first 7 holes, and I opened up a 6-shot lead, and a couple of stutters there on the 9th and 11th holes, but then an eagle on the 12th. I had a 3-iron to about 1 foot, playing with Nick Price and Peter Senior.
Wow.
And then I had a 5-shot lead, and then finished 3 in front. But teeing off the last round, playing with Nick Price, he was the star player, and I thought he would win. So I was just trying to play a good solid round of golf, and anyway, it unfolded just nicely for me.
So you talk about Baker Finch and Grady, those Australians you were coming through with at the time, and Greg Norman. There would have been perhaps a change into the guard at that stage. Who were some of the players that you looked up to that would have been no doubt playing in that field at that time?
Well, the big stars were Graham Marsh, Bob Shearer. Bob Shearer had won the Open in '82. Bob Charles was playing in the event. I played with Dennis Clark, another Kiwi, and Jim Thorpe from America. He was playing as well. So there was a few older ones, and I think it was like Peter Senior. He'd won a couple of events before before that. I think South Australia and somewhere else he'd won them for years. But I think by me winning that event, then Mike Harwood won a couple of years later. And I think it's sort of all of us sort of playing quite well sort of boosted each other. You know, Wayne Grady, he'd won in the 78 in Adelaide, and we were pushing each other along because we played a lot of tournaments and pro-ams together, travelling and playing around the world in Asia and Europe and all that sort of stuff. So it was yeah, you know, we were the next lot after, you know, Bob Shearer and Stuart Ginn, Ian Stanley, and these guys that we all look up to. We love playing with them.